Fintech Week London content board member and curator for the digital identity track Dave Birch, in a fireside chat with Jamie Smith from Evernym Inc. on moving from identification to authentication.
Great stuff. Thanks very much for sticking around, everybody. You have probably been thinking that one or two of the discussions about digital identity are a little futuristic, maybe a little esoteric. You're wrong, of course, because digital identity is the most important topic that we have to get right in fintech. But we thought we'd finish the day with a little chat about a live application which pulls together so many of the threads that we've been talking about today: identification, authentication, authorization, and new technology which is really going to make a difference to people. So let me just quickly establish the problem statement before we start hearing a little bit about the solution. The problem statement is this: how the fuck do you get on a plane? Really? Because do you know what a faff it is? Have any of you actually, just out of curiosity, have any of you actually been anywhere recently? Like, anyone? No one. You don't know what it's like. I was on a flight like 2 weeks ago, the first time I'd flown anywhere. You know what a faff it is, messing around? You've got to download barcodes and print things out and stand in this line and that line, and then you've got to get the test result and show the test. You have no idea. You're lucky that you're just working at home and not getting involved in any of this. But there are some people in this audience that are supposed to be getting out and batting for Britain in our post-Brexit universe. And I'm not batting for Britain anywhere if I've got to stand in a 7-hour queue at Heathrow on the way back. So bollocks to that. So the question is, how are we actually going to fix that real problem? A real problem of real interoperability, not some mucking about on a desktop thing, but this is: how do you link the doctor, the test lab, the airline, the passenger, the check-in? How do you actually link those things together and make them all work? I haven't the faintest idea, but luckily Jamie's been working on this, so he's going to fill us in a bit on it. So Jamie, oh, actually I should just say one more thing first of all. Yeah. This is something to do with the blockchain, right? So I thought that had gone the way of skateboards and hula hoops and things, but it's still a thing?
It's still a thing.
Okay, good. Okay, just checking in for the audience here. So, so how are we go? So, on comparable problems, like how do I get on a plane when there's not COVID? I have a passport that has like some numbers and symbols and things. I have an airline ticket. The people that make all the rules for this are who?
It's IATA. So the International Airports Travel Association, or right. International Association of Travel.
Or something like that.
Something like that.
Something in French, probably.
IATA, exactly. Okay. IATA.
So, so there's somebody that makes those rules.
Yeah.
So explain to me what they're doing about COVID before you tell me how you fix the problem and what's going live.
So what's really interesting is actually COVID and the response to COVID and health data is almost like a second phase for what they've been working on. They've been working on seamless travel. In fact, they've had an initiative at IATA, and this is the body that set the standards for boarding passes and that kind of thing. And they've had a vision, part of the organization is working on an initiative called One ID. And that's saying, how do we create identifiers and identity for travel, generally?
Right.
And their vision was that you can go from the curb to the plane without touching anything. And that's really complicated. You've got thousands of border crossing points, hundreds of airlines, hundreds of countries and different regulations, millions and millions of passengers traveling every day. And so their conclusion was, and this wasn't about tech, certainly wasn't about blockchain, it wasn't about credentials. They said, well, actually, what are our business requirements? We need something that's completely open by design. We need open standards. We need, from a business perspective, for a passenger to be in complete control. But if you dig a little bit further, they need to be able to do really complicated things like selective disclosure. I've got my passport, but you don't need all of it. I just want to just share my passport number. Or I've got my boarding pass, and the question is, should you be in this part of the airport, yes or no? Without revealing everywhere I'm going, everything that might be in my wallet. And another really important requirement was privacy. and making sure that this wasn't in a big centralized database globally.
Right.
Because then you're building like Facebook for travel,
Right.
where all their information is in one place. It's a single API. You get the fantastic customer experience, but you break democracy in the process. A final requirement is being able to put different types of credentials together. Well, I might have my passport from one entity, my boarding pass from another, my visa from another, and how can I, with paper, I'd put them into a bundle and hand them at check-in, for example. That doesn't work digitally. I've got my, a QR code from one app, and then I've got my paper thing, and my boarding pass is another app, so I bring that out. It doesn't work. So the conclusion was, let's give the passengers a digital wallet. And let's make that digital wallet based on open standards, ideally based on open source as well, meaning that anyone can participate. We approve a bunch of wallets. And so that was the vision before COVID. And so we've been working with IATA, and they represent something like 300 airlines globally, including all the big ones. And giving the passengers the digital wallet means that, well, I could put my passport in there. I could put my boarding pass in there. I could put my passenger locator form in there. Well, why couldn't I also put my lounge access in there, my visa, maybe even a biometric? So I show up at a gate, I look at a camera, and it opens. So they talk about, boarding pass, my face is my boarding pass. But the individual is in control of that data because it's their digital wallet. So that was the story they were going on, and then I'll talk about COVID in a second.
So what is it that you're doing that puts the individual in? So you said that they don't want to put everything in one big centralized database. So what is it that you're actually building underneath this app?
So the logic of this open standards approach means that every entity becomes a peer, and they all have a digital wallet. So the airline has a digital wallet, the airport has a digital wallet, and the passenger gets a digital wallet. And we're peers. It's not kind of, I'm large organization, I'm checking you tiny passenger who you are. Actually, I want to check it's the airport that I'm sharing data with. I want to check it's the airline I'm sharing data with. So we need this peer-to-peer interoperable open standards-based ecosystem. Lots of buzzwords in there, but the point is that...
I want to make the point that you're using the technology in a very practical
exactly
way.
So give the passenger a digital wallet. And what we're building is, at a very technical level, Evernym's got a mobile SDK, which means we can put a digital wallet in an app. Now, it could be a banking app, it could be a health app. In IATA's case, they've built a thing called the Travel Pass. So it's the Travel Pass app, it's in the app stores, you can go and download it. And in there is the digital wallet. And it's different to saying, I've got my data in a QR code, which I can proudly show to someone. Well, I've got to queue up and fiddle around with bits of paper to prove that it was my QR code. With this, the Travel Pass, they will issue a verifiable passport. So they scan the passport and issue me a digital verifiable credential of my passport in the digital wallet. It's now mine. And guess what? I can share just my first name, just my date of birth, just my passport number. And COVID came along. So that's what we're kind of doing practically. COVID came along and they said, some airlines, we've got this really thorny GDPR problem. Airlines don't want health data, no more than they want my HIV status to get on a plane. That's insane. Well, how do we solve that when I've got to prove my health data to get on a plane? Well, what if we give the individual a verifiable credential version of their health data, and I can share bits of it? I could share a yes or a no.
And just say for the audience, so when you say verifiable credential, you're not using the word in any, this isn't sort of some demotic, generic sense.
No.
When you say verifiable credential, you specifically mean a W3C standardized VC.
For the credential nerds amongst us, there's actually the W3C verifiable credential is actually a data format.
Yeah.
It's not a model.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a model, not a format. So actually, there's about 4 different ways you could do it.
Yeah. And
some are very much not privacy preserving. So I can't just share one attribute.
Yeah.
So if they say we're W3C credential compliant, you can say, well, it's like you say what's in the box.
Which signatures?
It's like you're saying what's in the box.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is the format? How is it being signed? And our flavor, the one that Evernym kind of co-invented and has been championing, allows you to not reveal signatures when you share the credential.
Yeah, so
it allows you to do
it uses it's what I call counterintuitive cryptography. So it uses a very modern digital signature scheme, which aids the selective disclosure. So it means that you can respond to a challenge with a credential from so it's that, is this person allowed on the plane? You're just disclosing the credential that this person's allowed on the plane, and you can check the digital signatures on that. And in fact, there's a hierarchy, isn't there? So you can check the whole thing.
Exactly, and that becomes really interesting. Well, vaccine credentials, it's just another credential. Test results, just another credential. And I've got my digital wallet. And so there's a split in this. There's been an explosion of health passes.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a split to those who are doing verifiable credentials, data in the QR code, which means they're going to fiddle with different apps and different wallets and so on, or the digital wallet approach, and putting those different attributes in that digital wallet, which means I can control them.
So which routes is this being trialled on at the moment?
So they're up to 72 airlines are now in open trial, and that's covering I think 170 routes: London, Dubai, Singapore, Sydney, different parts of the US, South Africa, and so it genuinely is global. And what's fantastic about, we heard earlier on a panel of why hasn't digital identity taken off? It's because you got to solve the business model problem, you got to solve the standards problem. Is it day, month, year, or is it month, day, year? You've got to solve what signature schemes you're going to use. You've got to do the governance framework. And of course, I had to have this perfect way through to say, well, we can run the global governance. We can set a standard quickly. We can endorse a kind of reference application of a digital wallet. We can bring this at the demand side, which is the airlines, and we can stand up the supply side, which is passports and now a global registry of labs. So, I think that the threads weaving through today of verifiable credentials, what's the business model, what are the use cases, where's the value, IATA are bringing together into an app that can be used by anyone globally to go and get a COVID test or a vaccine and use it for international travel anywhere. And it's going to be based on open standards. And here's the best bit. It itself could be a mobile SDK you could put into any wallet. So actually, the airlines could put it inside their own apps.
I have thought, I didn't want to distract you with that, but it does occur to me that if I'm trying to get into, the Emirates football ground, or I'm trying to get into the Wetherspoons or something, instead of them building their own stupid app, why don't they just use the IATA SDK? Because that's already got all the vaccine standards and credentials and labs in it, so.
Exactly so.
It's a pretty small step, I think, to take it in that direction. But let's just get back to the app a second, because what fascinates me about this is that you've built a real app to meet a real problem in pretty quick time, to be fair, and in pretty sort of difficult circumstances. But you've built something that's going to run at population scale. So just take us through a little bit of the thinking that went into why you chose the architecture that you chose.
So I should clarify, Evernym provides the product, which is the digital wallet, and IATA have built the app.
Sorry.
But we are providing all the APIs, the ability for a government or a lab or a health group or a doctor or hospitals to issue test results in the right format or to issue vaccines. And we're also providing the APIs for airports, governments, border force to request data and also to request only bits of it. So from an architecture point of view, without going too into the weeds of it, we need a global network where I can discover who the trusted issuers are. And that's where blockchain kicks in. That, it's, 8 hours of conference without that word popping into a fintech conference.
No one's mentioned it up until
now. And for good reason. It should disappear. Nobody cares about it. Just like the airlines and labs, they don't care about verifiable credentials and signature schemes. The difference here, I'll come back to your point, but the difference here is we're actually creating value. We've gone up the stack. We're now trying to solve real problems. And that's the wonderful thing about this IATA initiative is this wasn't credentials tech looking, hammer looking for a nail. This was a large organization bleeding tens of millions of dollars every day because the industry's down, laying off 50% of their workforce, who have a problem with, we can't build a centralized database. We can't have something that's not privacy preserving because the civil society groups will kill us. It won't get off. Users won't download it. And so they had this perfect set of requirements that as we now know, verifiable credentials and digital wallets meets those business needs. So the digital wallet we've embedded in the Travel Pass app could be put into any app, meaning there's no technical reason why I couldn't fly with my bank app. I'm trying to bring it back to finance.
No, well, actually, we opened up the afternoon. The minister said, we're in the UK anyway. We're shifting to this more framework-based approach.
Yeah.
The idea that we'll have a digital identity and use it everywhere is not quite right. You heard on the identity of people panel, people saying, ERA and so on. You said, we're going to, we want to have a travel identity, a bank identity, a health, but they should all be interoperable in that framework. And in your real example of all of this, these things should come together. I mean, they haven't yet, but they're heading in that direction. But it's also given you some experience in building this kind of solution, and I think it might be helpful to one or two people I'm hoping there are some entrepreneurial types in the audience who are looking to build new digital identity products and so on. Maybe you could just give us one or two things that you've learned in this process that would help other entrepreneurs.
Great question. I think, it's going to be the number one question that every organization should be asking, which is customer experience. It's all very well having, being smart about yourself and aren't we clever with our verifiable credential tech? But typically it's been very technology centric, very product centric even, and not thinking about, how do they want to accept a credential or do I download it? Those kind of nuances, that's been really important about the language of thinking about how I interact with it. We've known for decades that users don't want to manage their identity. I just kind of don't want to have to deal with it. So I just want it to happen, and I want to get an alert saying your test works, and oh, by the way, it's relevant for the trip you're taking. The test result you got is within the 48 hours you need to arrive. So the UX is critical. I think it's kind of that buzzword of ecosystems, but genuinely thinking about what data the airline actually needs, not it's available, therefore we should ask for it. So what is the minimum set of data we need? And then working away all the way back to, well, who's going to issue it? Like, what is that end-to-end journey? So, with the travel pass, I have to download it, I get my passport, I've got to go to a lab, an organization that doesn't care where I'm going. But that means the format has to be correct. So thinking about that end-to-end journey and what the attributes look like. And then lastly, having this different mindset of it's like there was a day we realized when Copernicus when the Earth goes around the sun, not the other way around. And I think realizing that individuals aren't orientated around the product, it's completely the other way around. The individual is at the middle of their ecosystem, and therefore I have the product should orient us around me, and that allows me to say, okay, it's COVID now. But in 6 months, there's no reason why I couldn't have a lounge access in here. Yeah,
I think I want people to understand just how impressive it is bringing all this stuff together. Because when you think about it, because you go to the app, so I'm going to fly to, where I don't know where I'm allowed to fly to at the moment, the Falkland Islands and Vanuatu or something. So I can say I want to fly somewhere. The app tells you if you want to go to this place, you need to get these tests. So you press, okay, I need to get these tests. Where are the labs that are near me and where can I get it done? And so you go to the lab downloads the test, it automatically goes onto the chat. Then you go to the airports, but everybody can read everything. It all works properly. It's amazing bringing all this stuff together. And it's already live on a whole bunch of routes. Yeah. And when is it going live to ordinary tedious members of the public like me?
I hope,
and not VIP
in a few weeks.
Like you.
I hope in a few weeks. There is. I just want to take that last point about finance and air travel. We've built this open ecosystem so that any airport or any airline can ask for my data, but in a privacy preserving, I get to control it because it's on my device.
Yeah.
But banks could ask for it. There's no reason. I've now got a verified passport that I had to have looked at and said, yeah, that's good. So if a fintech or a bank wanted to onboard me remotely, I now have a verified passport that's good enough for international travel.
Yeah.
So as long as the bank trusts that source.
I wouldn't get too excited about the bank thing. My son just opened a savings account and had to take his driving license into the branch. So let's not count on them as the critical path.
And the reverse is true. I could use my my bank app to fly, as long as the airline trusts my bank's passport check. Now that's a few steps on, but the point I'm trying to hammer home is that is now a technical possibility. There's going to be tens of millions of people with a verified passport.
Fantastic.
And I could now prove I'm over 21, yes or no. You don't need my age.
So
classic use case.
they're flashing the red thing at me, which means I'm boring and you're interesting. So I think it's time to draw a line under it. But let's just finish in the traditional, actually the non-traditional fintech fashion, but how we should finish all of these conversations. You've built it, it works. You're going for the Series A. How much are you raising?
20 million.
Okay, so anybody in the audience, the bidding's starting at 20 million. I hand it over to you. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. And Jamie, thanks for being so open with your answers.
Of course, thank you.
Appreciate it.